Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. I was gonna give you guys a little bit of a break for those subscribed, getting lots of video notifications from me for the past week, but as soon as this arrived, I have no choice. I have to clear my schedule and get this video out because this is really exciting for me. I've been waiting for this kit for well over a year. I think it was late summer of 2023 that Victrix announced what we thought at the time was a Varangian Guard kit, but we learned that it's actually this Rus Infantry kit with an unarmored and an armored sprue. The armored sprue can be used to make Varangians. But this is I've been very eagerly awaiting it, and when I saw that it was surprise shipping, because really there was very little information on it between when it was first announced and when at least I got the shipping notification that it was released. So I snatched one up, and it just arrived today, and I didn't want to waste any time in getting a review up for you guys. I did cheat a little bit here. I opened it up and I wanted to talk about why. I wanted to look at these sprues because for the first time this is two full sprues. We've seen one kit that we've done together that had a regular sprue and a command sprue, which is a little bit smaller, and we've done the Medieval Knights, which had the rider sprue and then the horse sprue. But this is the first one where there's two full sprues to look at together. So there's a lot of information. I actually went through and took notes. I've got notes over on the side on like number of bits. So I really wanted to take my time with this. And I gotta tell you, just from like picking this up, this is probably the heaviest Victrix set that I've dealt with. But someone asked me once, why do I cut the top of these off? And it's for two reasons. One, all Victrix sets now come in packaging like this, if you haven't seen it before, and so they can hang very nicely and you can see the bits inside. I've never had any issues with breaking. What I have had an issue with is when you try to squeeze the sprues out of the top, sometimes like a bit will get caught on the bag as you're pulling it out if you're not really careful, and that's what happened with me. So there's no breakage in transit or anything like that, but this happened as I was yanking the sprues out. So that's why I tend to cut the top off and just pull the sprues out, because I don't need any more Ziploc bags anyway. And it's just the safest way to get the sprues out. And it's 48 miniatures broken up as 6 miniatures per sprue, 8 sprues. Again, half of those are going to be unarmored and half of those are going to be armored. It also comes with this diagram that we've seen in all of the more recent kits that they've put out. And there was a question in the last video I put out about Victrix kits specifically and whether they can be kit bashed, how interchangeable they are. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, and we'll look at this at the end. I want to kit bash this with some of my existing Victrix Dark Age stuff just to take a look at that together. But I've mentioned before that the key to whether or not like bits are going to be interchangeable has to do with how the arms are sculpted and whether or not it already has part of the sleeve sculpted onto the arm. Because if it does not, chances are, like this bit, for example, just looking at it, you can see the way that the torso's aligned here and here, for example. I'm willing to bet I could squeeze this bit onto this body, right? Or like certainly any of the single hand weapons, there's going to be absolutely no issue there. Now, juxtapose that with this guy here, for example, where you've got part of his sleeves are sculpted on, so you can see the arms that are supposed to fit with this body are shorter because part of the arm is supposed to be already sculpted onto the body. So like these bits, you're gonna have a harder time getting them onto this body without some cutting work. Same thing here where it looks like this has the whole arm sculpted on. It's just the hand that you're gonna attach. So to get like this bit onto him, you'd have to cut it off at the hand. Little things like that. But again, that's what you want to pay attention to when you're looking at potentially kit bashing Victrix sets. The scale is all correct. You're going to have absolutely no issue there. It's just sometimes you're going to have to play around a little bit with the arm pieces and the bodies that you're trying to connect them onto. But you can see, again, this is the first time too that we've seen a set that had a front and back, because there's so many bodies. Again, 12 unique bodies in this set across 48 models, which is really something. So let's take a look at the sprues here. So there's I mentioned 8 sprues broken up half and half between armored and unarmored, and I just want to again show you, I've never seen anything like this in a Victrix set. Again, we saw the Hoplite set as the only kit we've gone over that had the same number of models. However, that was one sprue repeated 8 times. This is, you can see, 2 unique sprues that is just totally loaded with a crazy number of bits. So I think the best way to do this, I've been debating kind of back and forth how I wanted to review this. I want to really quickly go over just some stats about like the number of bits, the kind of unique bits, and then I want to go through each of these sprues individually and up close. But in terms of between two sprues, right, and therefore by extension multiply that by 4 over the, that's what you'll get in terms of what's in the kit. The armored sprue comes with 19 heads, and 4 of those are fully enclosed, and by that I mean like this, for those who care about full chainmail like face masks. So 19 heads on this sprue, 4 of them are enclosed, 17 heads on the unarmored sprue, and 2 of those are enclosed. So what that means over the entirety of the kit is you're going to have 144 total heads, and you're going to have 24 fully enclosed heads. So half of the bodies in this box could be armed with fully enclosed helmets, if that's something that you wanted to do. In terms of Dane axes, for anybody that's trying to put together, again, Varangian Guard's a great example, but even just making them into some kind of Huskarl, the armored sprue, comes with 4 of them, and the unarmored sprue comes with 1 Dane axe. So again, over the course of the kit, you're going to have 20 Dane axes. So 20 of these figures can be armed with Dane axes if you wanted to. Between just regular axes, swords, and spears, you're looking at the armored kit's got 5 axes, unarmored's got 5, so 40 there. And in fact, the armored side has 2 additional axes that are left-handed axes. So you could have, multiple figures, 8 in total over the course of the kit, armed with an axe in each hand. So 48 total axes. Again, 8 of those can be left-handed axes. You've got 40 swords across both sprues, broken up the same way, 5 and 5 for right-handed sword arms. And then you've got 6 spears on the armored sprue, and then 7 spears on the unarmored sprue for 52 total spears across the kit. So just a crazy number of weapon options, a crazy number of head options. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. So let's take a look at the armored sprue specifically here for a second, then we'll take a close look at the unarmored sprue. And then, as I have mentioned, I think a couple of times now, I'm going to put some of these together for us and see how they look. So you can see a great, again, number of bits, but there's some kind of like surprises on these sprues. At least they surprised me in terms of kind of like call them command option kind of bits that we'll look at in more detail here in just a moment. But yeah, really just an impressive display of bits here. So let's take a look at the bodies like we tend to do. We'll start in the middle. Again, in terms of layout, you got bodies in the center, weapons sort of flanking that, some accessories and shields, and then you got heads along the top and the bottom. It's kind of our standard Victrix fan-out formation of bits, if you will. And then this is, again, the bodies of the armored sprue. The armored sprue really does look like a command sprue in and of itself. It reminds me quite a bit of the command sprue that came in the regular Viking set. And you can see 2 bodies here that have detached torsos from the legs, and that gives you a little bit of pose variety. You can see this is like intended to go on in a specific way. It mostly has to do with how the plastic injection mold had to be put together. That this is like a leaning over body, and there's probably no way to do that as a single piece, so that's why they're detached. But it does give you a little bit of wiggle room in terms of putting them together. The armor that comes on these guys is so cool. This again, these are supposed to represent Rus, so like northern European, kind of into the Baltic areas, sort of stretching down into what is like modern day Ukraine. So in terms of like the armor, there's some Eastern influences in here as well. You got like this kind of lamellar looking armor here, and then here. And this guy here, if I flip it around, has something kind of like that too, but it also has these sort of pauldrons up here on the shoulders. And then several of them have greaves. And we saw this on the armored Saxons as well. That's why I'm so curious to see how some of these bits go together, because I think you could make some really crazy looking Dark Age, like shock infantry, just with an obscene amount of armor on them. But otherwise, the sort of male halberds that we've got here are a blending of sort of the regular styles that we saw in the Viking set. You can see that they all got these little like triangle pieces hanging down, which is cool. And then this guy almost looks like he's got a Norman style halberd where the chainmail comes all the way down onto the sleeves. It's just a very cool blend here. In terms of like other stuff that can be put on the bodies here, you've got this cloak here. This, I think, actually, and there's a couple of bits here. I'll point them out as they come up. But there's a couple of bits that I think Victrix has very cleverly pulled directly from the Viking set. And I think this is one of them. This, I think, is off of the command sprue from the Viking set. That's just the fur cloak from that kit. And then there's a couple of head options that I think were also like directly lifted, which makes honestly perfect sense to me because there's only so much variation that you could do for things like axes and armored Dark Age heads. Oh yeah, here it is. So this guy here, this head connects up with this cloak. So there's H4 and H4A. And this is absolutely right off of the Viking set. So this is from the Viking command set. This head too jumps out at me, and then it's upside down, but this head, for those curious about that. There's not a whole lot of them, but there are just a handful of bits that are definitely just straight off of the Viking set. But again, I think that's a smart play. It gives us more bits. You know, they don't have to worry about re-sculpting something that's going to look functionally identical. Let's jump up here to heads. I guess top and bottom have heads, but I want to do close-ups here of the heads. You can see a good mix here of what I mentioned before, like the fully enclosed helmets. And then these are all new, like Rus-style helmets, sort of, again, northeastern European Dark Age. But with the pointed helmets, a little bit more like decorative than what you might see from like a traditional Dark Age helm. And then lots of different beard styles too, which is just very cool. And then some options down here. All the sculpting is what we would expect from Victrix. Very crisp, very clean. Little flash. Yeah, nothing really even worth mentioning. There's like a little bit here on the sides of some of the bodies, but these are very clean sprues. Yeah, so great number of head options here. And some unique hairstyles too. This one actually I think is also from the Viking set, but this one is new. And gives us a good, yeah, look at that. So it comes with a ponytail that attaches back here. That's very cool. So just an excellent blend of even armored and unarmored heads on the armored sprue. So let's look at the weapons here. I mentioned, again, there's a good blend of axes, double-handed axes, spears, and swords on all of the sprues here. I really don't even know where to start. It's just so chock full of stuff. So I guess we'll start up here, kind of work our way down, and that'll flip the sprue over so you can see. But again, good sword arm here. It's cool too that there's a mix of what we kind of saw from the greaves that were on the bodies. You can see here that the hands, some of them have sculpted forearm armor as well. Dane axe, and pay close attention to the Dane axes too as we come across them, because there's variety even within the axe heads, which is neat to see. Spear arm down here. This is a, I think it's supposed to be like a command spear, just given the length of it. It's more like a pike. But there's, I think that's the only one where it's a left-handed spear. Everything else is a right-handed spear. And then work across here, same thing again. Look at the axe heads, especially as we like work our way down. Victrix has been doing such a good job of that, of including a good variety of like weapon types. It really makes the miniatures look unique. And especially for this era where there really wasn't like mass production of things outside of spears. But axe heads, swords especially, you would see some really neat variety in terms of the design and decoration. So working our way down here, again, two more Dane axes here, both of which you can see the axe heads look a little bit different. Armored arms on this one, and you got a little bit of sculpting of some armor like bracers up here. Another spear option. 6 shields, might as well quickly mention that because they're really not noteworthy, other than the fact that this is cool too, that the shields, you can see like this one is slightly smaller than these two. Same thing down here. It's almost like biggest, middle, and then smallest. So that's neat too, that you've got some variety even in shields. But then working our way back down here, again, we're going back to weapon options. Some swords, some axes. And then, as I promised, let's flip this over and take a look here. Another good reason to not pull the sprues out of the top, and instead I just cut the top of the bag, but you can see this one got yanked on its way out. So again, some sword options, another Dane axe. This is like a Dane axe, but look at the length of the shaft compared to like this one over here. So just, this is like an executioner's blade on the top of it, like, or I would say a traditional Dane axe, like some of the historical examples that exist. A couple of sword options here, a couple more spear options here, another axe. And then take a quick look at the accessories. This is, for those curious, maybe they didn't see my armored Saxon review. This is something that the Victrix just started recently doing, which is this like coif piece goes on the back of this helmet. So this connects here. Same thing here, like this hair piece connects on the back of the helmet, and then that allows it to be dropped on top of the model. It creates, it's a ton of depth that it creates for the headpiece, so that like the chainmail coif is extending down onto the back of the figure, and it allows more interchangeability, I think, of headpieces across bodies. But yeah, anytime you see that now, this is the back of a headpiece. This is something, as I said, Victrix just recently started doing, and it took me a minute on the Saxon review to figure that out. But that's what we're looking at here. So there's the armored sprue. Some neat pieces too in terms of like sax knives and stuff like that that can be attached to the front of the torsos here. But I would like to look at the unarmored sprue with you now. So here's our unarmored sprue, and as with the armored sprue, I want to take a quick look just as an overview of the sprue and its contents. You can see that the layout is very similar to what we saw with the armored sprue, in that you have 6 bodies in the middle, weapon options around it. You've got like shields up toward the heads on either side. So the layout's almost identical. The bodies in the middle, you can see one difference, I think, between them. One difference that definitely exists between them is that there are no detached torsos from legs, which take that or leave that. I don't have a problem with either version of that. I feel that the sculpts just have so much movement in them, where like a lot of them are lunging forward. They really do look like they're in the middle of a raid, just running forward. And again, contrast that with the armored sprue that we just looked at. Not to say that there's no movement in these, right? Because you can clearly see that some of these are supposed to be leaning forward. But these are more, I would say, like in fighting or kind of defending poses, whereas these guys really look like they're lunging forward. But again, unarmored is relative because they do have some amount of armor in some cases. Like these guys have these sort of padded halberds. They also, in some cases, have greaves sculpted on, like this guy down here. Yeah, really great sculpting. It's just so good. And some of them already have sax knives sculpted on here, and different styles and length of knives, which is neat to see. Some pouches sculpted on as well. Really gives them a lot of character, personality. Yeah, excellent sculpting even on the back. Some kind of unique looking pieces too, in terms of attire. Like I've not seen that style of hood from Victrix before. Even here, like the length of this guy's tunic, it almost looks like it's coming down like a skirt. Again, going back to more like Eastern influences. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but I think that this is just really, really strong showing. So yeah, great work on the bodies here. Let's jump back up and down to the head options here. I mentioned in this one, in terms of heads, you've got 17 total heads on this sprue, and 2 of them are fully enclosed, and this can be found here and here. But you can see just great, great detail on these faces and heads. Another one, I think, from the Viking set, but the others look to be unique. Again, like very cool beard design on this guy. I love this dude with the tassel up on his head there. And then these are almost like Germanic looking. This is neat. Nice long mustache. And this guy looks like a space wolf or something. It's just super cool. Back of the heads here. As a reminder, again, these pieces go on the back of these helmets here. And then here, coming back to more head options, this goes on the back of this. I don't see any more repeat heads here. These all look to be unique. Yeah, really fantastic. Again, just look at that. I don't know if I'm close enough here on the camera, but just look at the detail on some of these faces here. Just what a great job. And then let's take a look here at the middle. There's a couple of points of note. So this like hood piece, I assume, goes onto body B5 is what it's suggesting, B5A, and there's body B5. So this probably attaches down. We saw this kind of mechanic on their Normans. The crossbowmen have it, but the Norman infantry as well use this a lot, where it creates kind of like a hood that's going over the body, creates some extra depth, which is cool. This piece over here is really neat. This is a burning torch, again going back to this idea that they are raiders, and so you're going to have 4 of these bits within the kit, which is neat. And then these shields, these rectangular shields, are a neat addition. But what it also reminds me of are the sculpts specifically from Gripping Beast for Yam's Vikings. And that's another thing, again, in addition to these being excellent for Varangians, I think that this kit, if you're like picking this up for Saga, could absolutely make you a whole Yam's Viking force. I think Yam's Viking is a faction in Saga. So anyway, it's just another reason this kit, I think, is such an excellent addition to their range. And yeah, a couple more little command bits here. And then let's jump over to weapons. Again, pay very close attention to the axe heads because you won't see too many repeats, which, as I've mentioned, is something that we saw on the early Saxon kit. A couple spear options here. What appears to be a very long sax knife, which is super cool. And then this piece here is the first time I've ever seen them do this. This is a 2-part banner. So like this is the left hand and this is the right hand for a single gigantic banner that would attach together at the center point here. I thought that was really neat. 2-piece Dane axe. It looks like actually most of the Dane axes in this kit are a single piece, which contrasts with their Viking set, which had a lot of these kind of like 2-part Dane axes, which are fine, like they go together no problem. You can see there's kind of a notch here that helps to put them together in a straight way. Some spear options, some more sword arms with this kind of armored piece up on the forearm there. And then kind of finishing out the weapon rotation here, you got some weapon arms up here, some spears. Again, even the like spear heads are different sizes, spears are different sizes. And this one, look at this. Again, I have to believe that there was some example of this somewhere, that this is like a boar hunting spear or something. That's crazy. And then another neat looking axe head here. And I can't believe I missed it earlier, but there's a severed head for you, if that's something that you're looking for. Anyway, I could look at this for hours. Really incredible set. I mean, just absolutely crazy number of bits, and I'm very much looking forward to putting these together. So quick note for anybody who maybe has not seen one of my other reviews. I don't want to assume anything, but I just wanted to very briefly go over this diagram that's included in all the Victrix sets. As I mentioned earlier in the review, again, you've got one side for the armored bodies, one side for the unarmored bodies. But if you're not accustomed to Victrix sets, don't feel overwhelmed by this. What this is suggesting is certain bodies, they say, go with certain arm and head options. So like just looking here at the unarmored side, you can see here that like this one, they're saying is supposed to go with these arms, this head, right? And there's a pool of heads that can go on any of the bodies. So in other words, this head they're saying will really only or is only supposed to fit on this body. Any of these heads could also go on this body. Anyway, so that's what they're suggesting. I kind of mentioned at the beginning though, these are really more guidelines, and I'm going to prove it to you here in a second. And I'm going to let you in on a secret, which is that when I do these reviews for you, I use these diagrams to make just the first handful of models straight out of the box as Victrix once, and then I throw these away because these kits are so interchangeable. With just a little bit of thought and a little bit of dry fitting of pieces, what you'll find is that you really don't need the diagrams at all. And there's so many combinations that you can do that are not listed on the diagram that I think you're really missing out if you are just purely using the stuff that they suggest on those schematics. So let's go left to right here. I built things in a kind of crazy way, but I threw some headphones in and just went to town here. So what we have here, 3 figures on the left, are straight out of the box according to the schematic. armored bodies. So that's what we got here from the Rus kit, armored bodies. Here's a hand weapon and shield variant. Get a little bit closer here so you guys can see them. Same thing here. Again, this is an armored body using bits according to the diagram. So these, I mean, these are just a dream to put together. So again, that's another one straight off of the armored sprue. What I've got here are two bodies from the unarmored sprue. Again, just using bits according to how they're recommended on the schematic. Same thing here. Again, you can see that even the unarmored guy you can make to look pretty armored. And then what I did, I've got all these unassembled early armored Saxons is the Victrix set that I've got here. So these bodies are early armored Saxons, and I'm using bits. So the head and the weapons are from the Rus kit. So you can see, again, like that head is supposed to go with a specific Rus body, and I just plopped it on this early armored Saxon without, I think, any issue. Same thing here. So this is an early armored Saxon body, and you can see there's some aesthetic similarities in terms of like the greaves here on the armored Saxons. But again, the weapons and the head and this little sax bit are from the Rus kit. Same thing here. This one took a little bit of cutting, but you can see if you're clever about it, this is a two-handed Danax arm from the Rus armored sprue, and then again, this body is from the early armored Saxon kit. And then the head, of course, as well, is from the Rus kit. So again, with just a little bit of cutting and lots of dry fitting, like, you know, putting the bit up against the body to see if it works. Look at this one. This one's crazy. So this is a Rus body with an early armored Saxon head. And look, this is the like cloak and head with the fur lining here that's supposed to go with a specific early armored Saxon body. And I would argue I think this turned out just fine. Like without any issue, you wouldn't even know that this is not designed to go together. So again, I think that you're selling yourself short if you are purely sticking to the diagrams that Victrix includes. This is a Huscarl body. This is from their late Anglo-Danish Huscarls, and the Danax is from the Rus kit. So again, talking about interchangeability of parts, I think like I didn't have to cut anything at all. I just plopped it right on. No issues. Same thing there with the head. The head's from the Rus kit, and it dropped on, I think, without any issue. And then finally, I actually took apart one of my Vikings. I realized I didn't have any unassembled Vikings left, but this body is from their Viking set. And what I've done is I've just cut off. You can see, again, if you just I use the term dry fitting a lot, which means you're just putting the bit up against the body without any glue just to see like what the proportions look like. In some cases, like here, I just cut it off at the elbows to get them to attach to the bodies, and I use that Space Wolf head. And again, I think that they turned out great. So really another fantastic set from Victrix is I think my favorite Victrix set that I've put together. And I would go so far as to say too that I think if you are starting pretty much any Dark Age faction using Victrix models, maybe other than like Normans, I would recommend you pick up this set to blend in with. Because again, like if you just stick to, well, actually it's probably better if I use a diagram for 1 second. If you just stick to certain heads within this set, like, you know, this body with this head, like that's just a Viking, right? Like there's nothing Rus about this. And the same thing goes with like if you're starting up a Viking army, I do recommend you get the Victrix Viking set, but like if you're thinking about picking up 2 of those, I might instead recommend you pick up 1 Viking set and then one Rus kit, because it's going to give you just a tremendous amount of like bits and pose variety for the army. And again, if you stick to certain bits, it doesn't have to look like a Rus army. So anyway, another excellent offering from Victrix. Highly, highly recommend this kit. Maybe my strongest possible recommendation of any of the reviews that we've done so far. I do have another Victrix review to do. It's for their fantasy heads that they also just released, but I think I'll give us a couple of days here before my next video release, and then I'll have some painting content for you coming shortly thereafter. So in the meantime, I appreciate you guys hanging around for this review, and until next time, happy gaming.